welcome to the show. Today we are discussing AI. It's here, it's crossed the shore, it's taking over. We're all losing our jobs. No, no, no. But I am saying that this school, Alpha School in Austin, Texas, uses AI. It's pretty much driven through that technology. And should it be something to be concerned about? Well, according to this school, it's a positive thing. And you can't really argue with the results. Although, to be fair, we're getting information from their data that students are learning twice as fast having only learned, or should I say, having only spent 2 hours a day learning academics. So this is an accelerated type of learning. And this reminds me of the other, you know, podcast or episode that we did about the AI driven school in England, in which they have guides instead of teachers. They are working through an AI program that differentiates instruction based on student needs. And they, what makes this one a little bit more unique, though, is that after they finish their academics, then the guides support students through a self-driven learning model. It's more life skills driven. So the second half of their day might be working through public speaking skills, leadership, teamwork, entrepreneurship through workshops. And so this is the new wave, okay? And I think that if it's working for this school, let's do it. Not necessarily let us do it, uh, or at least not yet. I still have a few years to go before I retire. But if students are learning, and that's what appeals to this type of environment, this school in Austin, then I think it's a positive thing. I have one little pushback, maybe on this type of learning, but I just think about this AI school, Jacob, and I think
Mhm.
there's probably going to be a version of this coming down our way in the next few years. What do you think?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I feel, you know, I'm at the towards the end of my career, so I feel like, do I really have a say on this? But I do. I have 3 more years, about 3 more years left, and maybe a little longer, but I don't think so. But that being said, I think, like you, that it's coming down the pike for Southern California or California per se. I think in the next 10 years, we're going to see models of this here in California for sure. And I think in 10 years, for sure, education is going to look different. Period. It's going to look different. There's going to be pieces of this. I think that what was really attractive about this article was that these students spent 2 hours and their scores are at least what they're saying. Well, I'm not sure if it's correct, but they're saying that their scores are just as good as or better than other districts around them. But it's the stuff that you mentioned regarding the public speaking, the building cooperation with other people, learning how to work with other people, all in these workshops that they have these students going to. That's very appealing. And I think the person who's running the school, I think his last name's Price, as I remember, he was sharing that, he first did this because his daughter came home saying, "This is boring. School's boring." And you've heard that before. I remember one of the things I used to hate my dad asking us is, "What'd you learn today?" or "What'd you learn this week?" So, and just to have to think
You
about
used to
it.
hate, you
I
used
didn't
to
like
hate
it.
that?
I hated it. And but
Why?
but now I don't know. I would say this. Back as a child, I hated it. As an adult, I look back on it and I go, man, I'm so glad he asked those questions. He was so wanting to know. And I think he also wanted us to articulate it, to be able to
Uh,
be
I'm,
able to say
I'm
it.
just curious. I'm curious as to why. I'm just curious as to why you hated it.
I
That
just
never
didn't.
crossed.
Well, I think maybe one of the reasons was I had to think about it. I didn't want to think about school. I was like, I'm seeing my dad on Sunday. This is my vacation day. I don't want to think about school. That's what my thought was. And it wasn't that. I was having a bad time at school. But this young lady, just like how I did, felt at least that moment, wasn't happy with school. And to be honest, if I look back at my education, I think I had a pretty fair education. I had some really good teachers. But that being said, I see why this father was frustrated for his daughter, saying, you know what, we're going to start this school, see how it works. 2 hours, right, Ruben? You mentioned 2 hours that
Well,
they're focusing
the,
on
the,
on the core subjects.
the other thing is that it wasn't, it was that she was bored, but also there was this idea that some teachers were doing busy work with the students, this idea of busy work.
Right.
And so this is a concern I'm sure parents have, and it's a good way to also rethink your own teaching practice and say, am I giving meaningful work? And so I think this through a lot because we should always challenge ourselves and say, is my teaching authentic? Is it relevant? So you and I have talked about this where the projects that we give our students, is it something that is just going to stay in the classroom? That's why I don't do poster boards anymore because I feel like how is that authentic? No judgment on other people. Maybe I have a blind spot, but I feel like whatever I give them is it something that they could use or that they could build a skill on if it's a project. So it's just something that was interesting that they brought out is this idea of busy work, and that the second half of their day, they're doing some real relevant, authentic learning. And as I look at this is very close to project-based learning, big picture model that we do in
Right.
this country. Um, and they're all over the nation and these big picture schools where it's project based and you work on things that are your own interests. You have a strong interest in something and you research it. And so this is it's almost like a project based school with AI.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty innovative. And I'll say the same thing as I said when we did this with the England, when we looked at the England AI school, and that is if you're a good teacher, you'll never lack for a job, I think. If you're meeting the individual needs like these AI schools are doing, they're looking at student strengths and needs, and they're able to address them and give appropriate curriculum. If you're doing that as a teacher, then you're doing what AI does, but you're
Yeah.
better because you're the human version of it.
There is a worry though for it to look different. I think you're right. There's always gonna be jobs for good teachers, and in 10 years there'll be teachers, but there might be a lot less of us, and because of this component of AI. However, yeah, I think you can never get away from that. We've seen it even through distant learning that it's so important to have students in front of a teacher because kids can go to you and get some help one-on-one. It's a little more clear, they're more engaged, but at the same time, this whole idea of 2 hours a day, there's something to that. I think there's a lot there, and I do think there'll be people who will say, "Hey, this is taking, the unions are not going to like this," but this is the future. We got to,
Feel like-
yeah,
but don't you feel that it's almost like arguing, like it's almost very illogical to, push back against technology. It's almost like
yeah,
saying, what's this deal with the iPhone? Like what? This is where things are headed.
right.
It's almost like you can't say, oh, we can't have this. You have to say, how do we include this? This and what? How do we work with this? As opposed to fighting something that's inevitable, I think.
Good point.
But anyway, tell us what you think, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye.